He only wanted to be left alone, until she knocked from inside the wall. The rain didn't fall on this side of the stars, not anymore. On Veli's 9, the wind was dry, the dust corrosive, and the moons hung motionless like bruises on a dying world. Cole Arlen never thought he'd end up here. But then again, there was a long list of things he never thought he'd do. Living alone on a half-dead cargo hauler in a forgotten sector of space was just one of them. The ship was called the Driftwake, though even the nameplate was rusted over, hanging half loose on the side of the hull. It was old Union freight, long decommissioned, bought cheap at a junk lot on the outer rim. Cole had gutted most of it, turned one hold into living quarters, sealed off engineering except for manual overrides, and rerouted life support into just 3 sections. The rest of the ship was a tomb, silent, cold, and full of ghosts that didn't talk. That was how he liked it. He didn't need much. Just breathable air, stable pressure, and enough heat to keep frostbite off his fingers. The rest, the broken panels, the flickering lights, the walls that creaked with every gust of wind outside, he'd grown used to. It was his version of peace, a place where no one asked questions and no one expected answers. Cole had once worked the mining belts between Arcturus and the Silmary Line. Deep-bore ops, black rock, heavy ore, dangerous shafts that took more lives than they gave credits. He'd seen whole crews buried in one seismic quake. He dragged his own brother's suit back up an emergency tunnel once, empty, crushed flat. After that, he stopped digging for anything except quiet. The Driftwake sat nestled inside a dry dock cavern hollowed into the side of a meteor-cracked ridge. No one came out here unless they were running from something worse. Cole had a fuel crawler, 2 weeks of rations, and an off-grid power loop that could run for months if he kept life support low. That was enough. Enough to survive. Enough to forget. At least until the sound started. It was faint at first. A tapping soft like a thermal panel shifting under pressure. Then a thump, too deliberate, too rhythmic. Cole had been soldering a power relay when he heard it again closer. Not pipes. Not air pressure. Something or someone was inside the wall. He stood up slowly, the soldering iron cooling in his hand. The dim glow of the overhead lamp flickered as he walked through the narrow passage toward the auxiliary storage corridor. Dust floated in the air, caught in beams of tired yellow light. The ship creaked around him, groaning like an old animal stirred from sleep. The sound came again, 3 short knocks. He froze. Nobody knew he was here. No one had followed him. He'd scrubbed every registry tag off the Driftwake, spoofed its signature, disconnected from all major transponders. This ship was supposed to be invisible, unless it hadn't been empty when he bought it. Cole went back for his sidearm. It was an old repeater, still worn from his mining days, but cleaned every morning out of ritual. He slid it into his hip holster and grabbed the crowbar from under the bench. Lights hummed above him as he returned to the bulkhead. The knocking stopped. He stood still for nearly a minute, listening. Nothing. Then with slow hands he tapped on the panel just once. Silence. He wedged the crowbar into the seam and pressed forward. Old sealant cracked. Dust spilled from the edges as the panel groaned open, revealing darkness inside. The space behind it was barely a meter deep, an old maintenance crawl, but it wasn't empty. There was a blanket, thin and oil-stained, spread across the floor, an empty ration wrapper, a metal cup, and movement, a breath, shallow, trembling. Cole raised the light. 2 eyes stared back at him, wide, bright, shimmering silver in the dark. The face was young, alien, unmistakably so. Her skin was a pale lilac shade smeared with grime and blood. Hair white as bone, tangled and limp. She shrank back as the light hit her, shielding something behind her with both arms. A voice came, rough, shaking. "Please, don't hurt us." Cole didn't move. He didn't lower the light. Slowly she shifted to the side, revealing a second form slumped beside her. A boy smaller, maybe 8 or 9 by human comparison. His skin matched hers. His eyes were closed, and blood soaked the side of his tunic where a deep wound had torn through flesh. Cole's heart slammed once. Then again, he lowered the light slowly. "How long have you been in there?" he asked, voice low. The girl blinked, her lips parted, cracked with dehydration. 3 days, she said. Maybe 4, I don't know. Cole stared at her, at them, at the impossible situation that had somehow unfolded inside the walls of his solitude. And just like that, the silence he had paid for, the peace he had bought with every sacrifice, was gone, because the wall had knocked back. He backed up a step, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The girl was protective but not aggressive. Her body shielded the boys in a way that told him one thing above all else: this wasn't a trap. This wasn't an ambush. This was fear. He stepped back and laid the crowbar on the floor. "I'm not going to turn you in," he said. The girl flinched, unsure whether to believe him. "But I need to know if he's dying." She hesitated, then nodded. "He's burning," she whispered. "Fever." Cole muttered a curse under his breath and turned on his heel. "Stay there," he said. "I've got something." He moved fast, rummaging through the medkit he'd kept mostly out of principle. It wasn't much: an old stim injector, some fever patches, water tablets. He filled a thermos with clean water and grabbed a heating pad from under his cot. When he came back, the girl hadn't moved, but her eyes followed him like a wary animal. When he knelt and offered the thermos, she took it with shaking hands and helped the boy drink. Only then did she finally speak a name. "He's Cairo," she said. Cole nodded. "And you?" She paused. "Sierra." He looked at her again. Dust clung to her skin. Her arms were bruised. She had nothing but the clothes on her back and whatever courage had kept her alive in that crawlspace. And yet even now she held herself with a kind of quiet dignity. "Sierra," he said, "you're on my ship now. That means you follow my rules. First rule, no dying in the walls. Second rule, nobody starves. Third rule," he trailed off, realizing he didn't actually have a third rule. "We'll figure that one out later." To his surprise, a flicker of something, almost a smile, touched her lips, and that was how it began, not with a gunshot, not with an explosion, but with a knock from inside the wall and an answer. He guided them out of the crawlspace gently. Sierra emerged first, moving slowly, her limbs stiff from days of cramped stillness. She helped Cairo, barely conscious, scoot forward, his legs dragging. Cole reached down instinctively to lift him. She flinched, then hesitated, eyes flicking between his hands and her brother's pale face. "I won't hurt him," Cole said, and his voice came out softer than he expected. Sierra nodded once. Cairo was lighter than he looked, all skin and bone beneath the dirty tunic. Cole carried him to the galley, a bare metal room with a heat lamp, a crate for a table, and 2 stacked cots welded into the corner wall. He set the boy gently on the lower cot and tucked the heat pad around his chest. The old generator hummed quietly in the wall behind them. Sierra hovered near the door, unsure. "You hungry?" Cole asked without looking up. She didn't answer, but the way her eyes lingered on the half-open ration case gave her away. He opened 2 packs, dropped a heat cube into the warming dish, and let the smell of processed protein fill the room. Not exactly gourmet, but after 4 days in a crawlspace, even rubber-tasting nutrition paste was a feast. Sierra took the bowl with both hands, careful not to spill. She didn't eat immediately. Instead, she walked over to Cairo, sat beside him, and gently lifted his head into her lap. Only after she coaxed a few spoonfuls into his mouth did she allow herself a bite. Cole watched all this from across the galley. Something tight in his chest shifted. Not much, but enough. They didn't talk that first hour. There wasn't anything to say. Cairo dozed under the blanket. Sierra ate in slow silence. Cole went about checking the systems, half to give them space, half because his nerves couldn't sit still. The hull temp was stable, oxygen filters holding. Reactor output low but manageable. Life support was still configured for 1 body. He adjusted it for 3. When he returned, Sierra was still awake. She had pulled her knees up to her chest, arms wrapped around them, eyes alert beneath the wash of yellow light. She looked like someone who had spent her entire life learning how to sleep with one eye open. Cole sat across from her and leaned back against the wall. "You want to tell me what happened?" he asked. Sierra didn't answer right away. Her gaze drifted to her brother. "We were being transported," she said finally, voice low. "Not legally, not safely, no food, no light. They kept us sealed like parts." "Slavers," she nodded. Cairo wasn't supposed to be on the manifest. They only wanted adult females. He followed me on board. I didn't know until we were already launched. Cole clenched his jaw. And how'd you end up on the ship? We escaped. I overloaded a lock during transfer between holds. We ran into a cargo shuttle. I thought we'd find somewhere to hide, but it detached, dumped us here. Alone. I think it was an accident. It wasn't powered. No, just drift-loaded. A mistake, maybe, or maybe they knew. Cole looked at her. Knew what? That no one would check a junk ship, she said. That no one would hear us knocking. His eyes narrowed. They were just going to let you die in there. Sierra said nothing. She didn't need to. Cole stood and paced once, dragging a hand through his hair. The Driftwake wasn't a rescue ship. It wasn't supposed to carry passengers. He'd bought it because it was invisible, quiet, and now somehow it had become a shelter for two hunted strangers. You're lucky I even heard you, he muttered. We weren't counting on luck, Sierra replied quietly. We were just hoping. The way she said that word, like it was foreign in her mouth, made him stop cold. He looked at her again, really looked. Not just the grime and the dirt and the blood, but the way she curled protectively around her brother. The way her back never touched the wall. The way her voice never begged but never challenged. She was more than a survivor, she was still fighting. You can stay, he said. Her eyes flicked to his, sharp with surprise. Just until he's well, Cole added, and only if you follow rules. Sierra nodded once. Thank you. He waved it off. I'm not doing it for free. You'll help keep the place running, patch wiring, scrub filters, nothing fancy. I can work, she said. I learn fast. We'll see. He stepped back toward the hatch, then paused. The upper cot's yours. Don't touch my locker. I won't. Good. He walked away before she could say anything else. That night Cole lay awake in his bunk, staring at the ceiling. The hum of the generator, the faint tick of heat regulators, sounds he'd lived with for years, felt different now. Not louder, just not alone. He didn't sleep much. But strangely, he didn't hate that either. By morning the ship was warmer. Sierra had cleaned the galley floor, repurposed a cracked dish as a water bowl, and even rewired the flickering lamp over Cairo's cot. She didn't ask permission. She just worked. Cole watched her in silence. Cairo stirred briefly, groaning as his fever broke. Sierra whispered something in a language Cole didn't recognize, soft, melodic, like the hush of wind over glass. You're not just some random refugee, are you? He said finally. Sierra's hands froze. I was something else, she said. Before. Before what? Before the treaties fell, before my kind were no longer useful. What were you? She looked at him then, silver eyes glowing faintly under the galley light. I was a translator, a teacher. I spoke for others who couldn't. And now I hide. Cole nodded slowly. He didn't push further. He recognized that kind of silence, the kind that holds more pain than words can carry. After a long moment, he said, Cairo's lucky to have you. Sierra smiled faintly. I'm lucky to still have him. The next few days passed in a blur of quiet routines. Sierra learned the ship quickly, faster than Cole expected. She didn't just follow instructions, she improved them. Rerouted heat ducts for better efficiency. Repaired a broken stabilizer on the main comms array. Even got the food recycler running at 60% capacity, something Cole had given up on years ago. Cairo began to recover. His fever broke fully by the third day. He still didn't talk, but he followed Sierra with his eyes, drank water when offered, and didn't flinch when Cole entered the room anymore. One evening, as they sat in the galley sharing warmed ration cubes, Sierra asked a question for the first time. Why are you alone out here? Cole stared at the floor. Because people die, he said simply, and I got tired of being the one who walked away. Sierra didn't respond right away. Then why did you open the wall? She asked. Cole looked up. Because it knocked, he said. The hum of the Driftwake's aging reactor was like a second heartbeat to Cole Arlen. It was background noise, steady and predictable, something he had grown to trust more than people. But now, for the first time in years, it wasn't the only sound he woke up to. This morning it was breathing, light, hesitant, not his own. Across the galley, Sierra sat cross-legged beside Cairo, brushing the boy's fine white hair with her fingers, softly untangling it in patient silence. Cole lay still on his cot for a moment, watching them. The heat lamp threw long shadows across the metal walls, softening the harsh edges of the ship. Cairo had shifted during the night, curling closer to his sister, his cheek pressed to her thigh. He hadn't spoken yet, not a word, but his color was returning, and his fever had receded into a manageable flush. Sierra's presence, calm and composed even in exhaustion, was like a shield for him. Cole sat up and cleared his throat. Sierra didn't look startled. She simply glanced up, nodded once in acknowledgement, and resumed brushing her brother's hair. Cairo stirred at the sound, his silvery eyes blinking open briefly before fluttering closed again. He slept through the night, Sierra said quietly. The fever didn't spike. That's good, Cole replied, stretching his arms with a grunt. He's stronger than he looks. Sierra gave a faint smile. He always was. Cole stood and crossed the galley to the small console near the wall, checking the power diagnostics. Everything was holding for now, but one of the secondary couplers was failing again. He added it to his mental list. When he turned back around, he found Sierra watching him, not warily, not defensively, but with something else, curiosity. "You've been here alone for how long?" she asked. 2.5 years, he said, more or less. No crew. There was. For about a week. Then they left or died, depends how much truth you want. Sierra tilted her head. You're not what I expected. Cole raised an eyebrow. What did you expect? She shrugged. Someone who would have sold us out already. Cole stared at her for a long moment. You still think I might? I think it's safer not to assume kindness lasts, she said, matter of fact. That hit harder than he wanted it to. Not because it wasn't fair, but because it was too fair. He didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the supply crate and retrieved a few sealed ration packs, tossing one to her. She caught it easily. You should eat, he said. You'll need your strength. She nodded and opened the packet. The silence between them wasn't tense anymore. It was just real. Later that day, Cole guided her through a maintenance crawlway to show her how to reroute the heat coils manually. She listened carefully, asked precise questions, learned quickly. Cairo stayed in the galley with a heat cube and a cup of warm, nutrient broth. He didn't speak, but he watched everything, like he was storing the world for later use. It wasn't until evening, when they returned from rewiring the starboard intake valve, that the knock came. 3 sharp taps, deliberate, not metal on metal, flesh. Cole and Sierra froze at the same time. He reached for his sidearm. Sierra dropped into a low crouch beside the bulkhead, pulling Cairo gently behind her. The knock came again, softer this time, followed by a muffled voice. Anyone aboard the Driftwake? This is a routine scan sweep. Union Salvage Registry tag not found. You are required to respond or signal distress. Cole cursed under his breath. They're scanning, he whispered. Sierra looked up at him. How close? Too close. He pulled open the access hatch to the crawl tunnel near the water unit. Get in. I'm not. Now. Sierra didn't argue. She lifted Cairo, who whimpered softly but didn't resist, and slipped into the tunnel. Cole sealed the hatch behind them and moved to the cockpit. The scanner was already pinging the outer hull, a low buzz that tickled the ship's old frame. Cole tapped in a diagnostic override, flooding the ship's interior with colder air to mimic dead power levels. He dimmed the lights to near dark, rerouted life support to make the environmental systems seem offline, and pulled the external panel data. The ship outside was a small patrol skiff, government-issued, but not military, probably one of the freelance inspection crews that trawled the forgotten systems for salvageable tech. They were supposed to file official notices before boarding, but this far out, rules were guidelines. Cole opened the comms. Driftwake responding. What do you want? A pause. Then a voice crackled through the channel. Unregistered vessel. State your name and purpose. Cole Arlen. Bought this wreck from the Tarek salvage lot 6 weeks ago. It's dead weight. I'm gutting it for parts. Any passengers? Nope. Scans show faint thermal signature near center mass. Cole gritted his teeth. Probably heat bleed from the reactor core. This thing's held together with spit and rust. There was a long silence. We're logging your ID, the voice said finally. Keep your signal clean and you won't have problems. If there's anything you want to declare, cargo, fugitives, unlicensed life forms, now's your chance. Cole leaned back in the seat. You've got nothing to find here. Another pause, then, fine, move along. The scanner shut off. The ship drifted for a few more seconds, then rotated and vanished off the scope. Cole didn't move for a full minute. When he finally opened the crawl hatch, Sierra and Cairo were waiting. The boy clung to her side. Her eyes met Cole's as she emerged. Are they gone? For now, you lied for us, he nodded. Not my first time lying. Sierra studied his face. Why? She asked. He hesitated, then said, because I've seen what happens when no one does. That night, none of them spoke much. But for the first time, Sierra didn't keep her distance. She sat beside Cole as he soldered a burnt relay, handing him tools without being asked. Cairo curled up under the heat lamp, watching old Earth cartoons on a cracked tablet screen Cole had salvaged from engineering. No one said the word family, but something about the way the three of them sat in the same room, without fear, without tension, felt like the beginning of something close. Just before the lights dimmed for the night, Sierra turned to Cole. Thank you, she said. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The days that followed blurred together in a quiet rhythm of warmth, tension, and hesitant peace. The driftwake, once nothing more than a rusted hull adrift in forgotten space, began to hum with a different kind of energy, not mechanical but human, or close enough. Sierra had taken to cleaning the galley without being asked. Not just wiping surfaces, but real cleaning. She cleared out debris from old vents, fixed the air recirculation panel, even stitched the ripped seat cushions with scraps from a torn utility tarp. She never complained, never asked for anything, never slowed down unless Cairo needed her. Cairo, for his part, had begun to sit up on his own. He moved stiffly, still favoring the side where his wound had once soaked through his tunic, but the fever was gone. His appetite had returned. He didn't speak, but he watched. Always watched. Cole noticed how the boy's eyes followed him around the ship, not with fear now, but with quiet study. The way he examined each tool Cole used. The way he tilted his head when Cole explained a system aloud, even when he thought Cairo wasn't listening. One morning, Cole found the boy crouched near the engine bay, hands deep in a tool crate, inspecting each piece with the deliberate focus of someone who had lived too long in silence. Cole didn't say anything. He just pulled out an old thermal wrench and handed it to the boy. Cairo looked up at him. You turn it counterclockwise if it's jammed, Cole said. Clockwise if it hisses. Cairo didn't nod, but his fingers curled around the wrench and he held it like it mattered. That was enough. Later that same day, Sierra helped reroute the energy from the auxiliary life support into the heating unit that ran along the starboard corridor. The ship had a habit of venting cold there during early cycle hours. She figured it out within 2 minutes of Cole mentioning it in passing. You used to work systems? He asked, watching her hands. She shook her head. I was trained in interface integration, communication mostly, but when the systems broke down, no one else fixed them. He stared at her profile for a long beat. And before, she repeated like the word came from another life. Before the treaties collapsed, I worked for a peace delegation on Rennie's Prime. I taught children, negotiated between border groups. I wore gowns instead of grease. Cole raised an eyebrow, hard to picture. I didn't think I'd survive without it, she said. Turns out, clothes are just clothes. Dignity is harder to lose. He didn't say anything. They worked in silence for the rest of the hour, but something about her words lingered. That night after the reactor cycled into low-power mode, they shared a meal in the galley. Cairo chewed silently on protein rations, his legs dangling from the edge of the bench. Sierra sipped nutrient broth slowly, elbows on the table, eyes half-lidded with exhaustion. Cole finished first. He leaned back, arms crossed, watching the two of them. For once they looked less like strays and more like passengers. No, not passengers, not anymore. They listed you as cargo, didn't they? He asked, voice low. Sierra looked up. She didn't answer, not right away, then softly, yes. Cairo flinched, just a little. They had me tagged, she continued. Barcode, biometric patch, heat signature limiter. I ripped most of it off before we escaped, but Cole's expression hardened. They were planning to sell you. Yes, and him. Sierra's eyes dropped, her voice changed. He wasn't supposed to be with me. He followed me onto the wrong side of the gates when the militia stormed the refugee zone. I tried to get him out. I failed. No one helped. There was no one left to. The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was heavy, like a gravity well pulling them all toward a truth they'd avoided naming. "You're not cargo," Cole said. Sierra looked at him, something raw flickering behind her silver gaze. "You say that like it matters." "It does, because if you're not cargo, then this ship's not a cage." Cairo blinked. Sierra's breath caught. "You're not passengers either," Cole said. "Not anymore." She studied him for a long time. "Then what are we?" He didn't answer right away. He didn't know the words, not yet. But he stood and walked over to the small shelf near the cockpit, one of the few remaining relics from when the Driftwake had a crew. There were 3 mugs, one black, one blue, one clear. The black one had a crack, the blue had no handle, the clear one was whole. Cole took them all and brought them back to the table. He set them down, one in front of each of them. "No one drinks alone on this ship," he said. Cairo looked at the cup in front of him, eyes wide. Sierra stared at hers like it was an offering. It wasn't much, but it was something. The next morning, the ship buzzed with a subtle shift in energy. Cole found Sierra already in the reactor corridor, sleeves rolled up, hair tied back with an old strip of cloth. She was inspecting the coolant lines, cross-referencing them with an old schematic on a cracked data pad. "Don't remember giving you access to engineering," he said. "You didn't," she replied, "but your logs are disorganized." "Excuse me." She turned the pad toward him, showing 3 overlapping temperature graphs. "Your coolant valves are running too hot on loop 2. If you don't reroute soon, you'll blow a seal." Cole blinked. She handed him the pad. He took it without argument. She smirked. That was new. Over the next several days, Sierra began leaving small things in the common areas, her blanket folded on the back of the bench, a spare water flask near the tools, a threadbare sketchpad she gave to Cairo. He began to draw simple things, wires, connectors, a crude version of the ship's layout. His hand still trembled sometimes, but his lines were straight. One night, Cole found a sketch folded and left on his cot. It was a drawing of him, sitting at the console, welding torch in hand, eyes focused. The style was rough but unmistakable. He tucked it into his locker without a word. 3 weeks after he opened that wall, Cole no longer remembered what the ship had sounded like before it echoed with more than just his footsteps. Cairo had started speaking. Not much, not often, but enough. "Wrench," he said one day, holding up a tool. Cole nearly dropped the capacitor he was holding. "You talk now?" he asked. Cairo nodded. "Only when I need to," he said. Cole smiled. "Smart kid." Cairo grinned for the first time. It was Sierra who voiced the thought they'd all been circling. "We can't stay here forever." They were in the galley again. The heater buzzed softly, and the stars outside the viewport blinked like a heartbeat. Cole stared at his cup. "I know. They'll come back. I know. We need a plan." Cole leaned back. "I was thinking about that. The Driftwake can still fly. She's not fast, she's not subtle, but with the right mods." Sierra raised an eyebrow. "You want to make a run. I want to find somewhere they won't look. There's no such place." "There's hope," Cole said. "And that's more than you had in that wall." Sierra was quiet for a long time. Then she stood, walked over to him, and placed her hand over his. Her voice was quiet, steady. "If we run together." Cole nodded once, and in that moment the ship finally felt like it had a crew. The first fire didn't come from within. It came from the sky. It started with a ripple, a slight distortion in the long-range scanner. At first, Cole thought it was just background radiation bleeding from the edge of a nearby belt. But then came the second ping. Stronger, closer, focused. The Driftwake's passive scanners were old, half-cannibalized for spare parts, but even they couldn't miss the cold, precise pattern of a ship-to-ship tracking sweep. Cole cursed under his breath and dropped the wrench in his hand. In the galley, Cairo was reading, real reading now, from a screen Sierra had patched together from 3 different salvage boards. His voice, still soft, carried the rough edges of both innocence and recovery. Sierra was checking the vent filters in the far wall, her sleeves rolled up again, face smudged with oil. She didn't need to see Cole's face to know something was wrong. "What is it?" she asked immediately. Cole didn't answer. He moved quickly to the cockpit, fingers flying across the dusty console, trying to force the scanner into a deeper diagnostic loop. But the data confirmed what his gut already told him. They weren't alone anymore. Sierra followed, pulling the grease cloth from her belt as she walked. Cairo trailed behind her, holding the edge of her tunic like he used to when they were running through streets full of smoke. Cole pointed to the screen. "They're back." Sierra squinted. "Slave or ship?" "Not the same one," he said. "Different signature, but same shape, same heat modulations. They're hunting slowly, carefully, like they know someone might be hiding." Sierra exhaled through her nose. "They're not looking for the driftwake, they're looking for us." "They might not be sure we're here yet," Cole said. "But one more scan, one too many heat signatures, and this crate turns from junk to target." Cairo looked between them. "What do we do?" Cole met his eyes. "We disappear again, fast." The preparations were quiet but urgent. Cole rerouted what little power they had left into the stealth protocols, rudimentary, more like tricks than tech. He dropped the external temperature 10 degrees and engaged a decoy ping from the opposite end of the canyon. The slaver's sensors might see it as an abandoned mining drone. Sierra packed only what was necessary: rations, water tabs, a medkit, a heat cube, and Cairo's sketchpad. She didn't say anything about what she left behind. Cairo did as he was told, no longer wide-eyed but not hardened either. He understood. He always understood too much for someone his age. Cole briefed them near the escape tunnel. "There's a shaft near the old stabilizer bay," he said, "shielded with lead lining. It was built to hide from solar flares. It'll mask heat signatures for a few hours if we need it." Sierra narrowed her eyes. "You're not going with us. If they land, I need to be the one they see." "Why?" "Because they expect scavengers. One man picking through old parts. They'll scan and move on. If they catch a family, they ask questions. And if they ask too many, they take." Cole nodded. Sierra looked at him for a long moment, her jaw clenched. "You're assuming they'll talk. I'm assuming I can buy you time." "No," she said flatly, "we're not doing this." Cole blinked. "What? We're not leaving you out here alone to die for us. You think this is about martyrdom. I think you're used to throwing yourself in front of every bullet because you don't think you're worth saving." The words hung between them like fire, not loud, just true. Even Cairo winced. Cole didn't speak for a moment. Then quietly, "You're not wrong." Sierra stepped closer. "But we didn't survive this long just to bury the first person who gave us a place to breathe." "Then what do you suggest?" "We fight smart," she said. "We use this ship. We use our heads. We don't run unless we have to. And if they land," Sierra looked him straight in the eye, "then we let them find what they expect: junk, failure, cold steel. And when they look away, we fly." The slaver scout landed at dawn. It was sleek, matte gray with twin dorsal thrusters and a hull covered in static dampening panels. Not military, but close. Two figures disembarked, one with a thermal scanner, the other with a rifle slung low like a warning. Cole stood outside the driftwake, grease on his jacket, a welding torch in one hand and a broken pipe in the other. His posture was perfect, slouched, annoyed, exhausted. The kind of man who barely noticed ships anymore, let alone threats. They didn't call out at first. They scanned, silently, methodically. Cole ignored them. One of them finally stepped closer. "You the owner of this wreck?" "More like the guy trying to keep it from falling apart," Cole said without looking up. "Ship registry doesn't match Union logs." "No shit. I bought it from a junkyard." "Name?" "Arlen, Cole Arlen." "Seen anything unusual around here?" "Define unusual." The man with the scanner didn't smile. "People, movement, strays." Cole straightened slowly, wiped his hands on his pants and looked him dead in the eye. "You think anyone would crawl into this hole for fun?" The rifleman glanced toward the ship. "You living in there?" "Can't afford rent on a penthouse," Cole muttered. The scanner stepped forward. "We're going to need to do a sweep." Cole blocked the ramp. "You got a warrant?" Silence. "You gonna show me papers?" Cole continued. "Or you just hoping I look scared enough to step aside?" The scanner smirked. "Just a sweep, old man, relax." Cole didn't move, not an inch. Finally, the rifleman put a hand on the other's shoulder. "Come on, he's got nothing, let's go." They hesitated, then stepped back. "Keep your head down," the scanner said. "No promises." They left. Cole didn't breathe until the engines flared and the ship lifted off, shrinking to a speck in the sky. Back inside, Sierra gripped the support beam so hard her knuckles widened. Cairo crouched beside her, holding a broken wrench like it was a weapon. Cole entered and exhaled. They bought it. Sierra's eyes met his, and next time, he sat down heavily. "Next time we're not here." She nodded. They left that night. The Driftwake's engines screamed to life, fighting rust and wear and fear. The stars opened like a cold sea above them, and they flew fast, low, silent. Cole had no destination, not yet, just a direction away. Sierra sat beside him in the cockpit, eyes wide but steady. Cairo curled into a blanket in the co-pilot's seat, his sketchpad clutched to his chest. The fire hadn't burned them this time, but it hadn't asked permission either. And now they were running with open eyes. Space was not silent, at least not to Cole. After years drifting along the edge of the outer systems, he'd learned the difference between quiet and silence. Silence was what you felt when the ship powered down and there was no hum to keep your thoughts company. Silence was what came after people died and before you decided whether to care. Quiet, though, quiet was something else. And right now, in the warmth of the Driftwake's cockpit as it cut across a starless drift channel with only minimal power signatures, the air wasn't silent. It was quiet. Cairo was asleep on the floor near the auxiliary console, bundled in a thermal blanket, his head resting on Sierra's folded coat. The tablet he'd been sketching on had slipped from his fingers, screen dimmed but still glowing faint outlines of a drawing. Two figures side by side, one tall, one shorter, staring up at stars. Sierra sat across from Cole, legs tucked up in the co-pilot's chair, chin resting on one knee. Her eyes had lost some of their wary edge in recent days, but they still scanned everything, still calculated, still prepared. Cole kept his eyes on the console. The sensors were quiet. No new scans, no heat traces, no signs of pursuit. Still, he didn't relax. "Where are we headed?" Sierra asked softly. Cole didn't look up. "There's a refuel port on the edge of the Scallon stretch. Not official, not clean, but I know a guy who won't ask questions." She nodded. "And after, Cole finally glanced at her. "I find a place to land, tear out the rest of the registry tags, bury this ship's history as deep as it'll go. And us," he paused. "You'll have options," he said. "I don't expect you to stay." Sierra was quiet for a long moment. Then, so softly he almost didn't hear it, she said, "I don't have anywhere else to go." The hum of the engine filled the space between them. Cole looked at her, not just the way she sat in shadow, not the tiredness in her eyes, but the strange stillness in her chest, like she was bracing for disappointment. "This ship," he said finally, "wasn't built for more than one." She smiled faintly. "That doesn't mean it wasn't meant for more." He stared at her. Sierra met his gaze, steady. "I've been in rooms that had four walls, power, food," she said. "But they weren't safe. They weren't homes, they weren't choices. This," her eyes drifted to Cairo, "this is the first time I've heard him sleep without twitching." Cole's chest tightened. "He watches you," she said. "He trusts you. He barely talks. But he sleeps, and he draws. That's more than he's done since we lost our parents." Cole didn't respond, couldn't. Sierra leaned forward, her voice even quieter. "We don't want to leave, not unless you ask us to." He looked at her and this time really saw her, not just a survivor or a runaway or a refugee, not a problem or a responsibility, but a woman who had lost everything and still found a way to protect someone else. A woman who could have left, who had every reason to guard herself, and yet was asking, gently, if there was room for her in his life, in his ship, in his silence. "There's not a lot of space," he said finally. Sierra smiled. "We've lived in a crawl space, we'll manage." He chuckled under his breath. "Not much in the way of comfort. I've slept on coolant coils. No curtains. We'll hang sheets." Cole let out a breath, leaned back, and let the quiet settle again. This time, it didn't feel empty. Later that night, after the engines cooled and the ship entered dark drift mode, Cole stood at the galley sink, rinsing his hands. The water system still stuttered, refusing to keep pressure for more than 10 seconds, but it was something. Behind him, soft footsteps approached. Sierra. He didn't turn immediately. She came to stand beside him, her hip brushing his elbow as she reached for the cloth towel. "Thanks," he muttered. She didn't move away. Her voice was soft. "This was your space. You built it to be yours." He nodded. "And now it's different." Another nod. "Does that scare you?" Cole finally turned, drying his hands on the towel. Sierra stood closer than usual. Her hair was damp, pulled into a loose braid. She was wearing the same patched flight shirt he'd given her weeks ago, the one too big in the sleeves but somehow fitted across her chest like it had always belonged to her. Her silver eyes searched his face. "I'm used to being alone," he said. "I'm not asking you to stop," she replied. "I'm asking if we can be alone together." He blinked. The words hit him with unexpected gentleness. Not a demand, not a cry for safety, just a quiet question, a chance. She reached up, fingers brushing the edge of his jaw. "I don't want to sleep in my cot tonight." He tensed, not from fear but from uncertainty. It had been so long since someone reached for him, so long since his skin meant anything more than function. "You sure?" "Yes." She stepped closer. "I don't want to be careful with you," she whispered. "I want to feel something real, even just for one night, but I don't want you to pretend it doesn't mean something." "It does," Cole said. "That's why I'm afraid." She smiled softly, took his hand and led him toward the sleeping quarters. The cot was small, too small for two people really, but they made it work. Sierra lay beside him, pressed along his side, her head tucked beneath his chin. Her fingers traced slow, uncertain lines across his chest. Cole held her gently, one arm around her back, the other tangled in the blanket above. They didn't rush. There was no fire, no urgency, just breathe, just closeness. Just two people rediscovering what warmth meant when it wasn't borrowed, when it wasn't bargained. There was softness in the way she moved, inviting but unafraid. She undid the buttons of her shirt one by one, never breaking eye contact. He kissed her collarbone, her shoulder, the underside of her jaw, and she sighed like the tension of 100 dark nights finally let go. When they touched, it was careful at first, then certain. Their bodies aligned like pieces meant to be together, not perfectly, not easily, but honestly. And when they fell asleep, wrapped in the narrow bed, Cole didn't wake from nightmares. For the first time in years, the room wasn't just his. It wasn't meant for one. In the following days, the ship felt different, not just because the crew had grown to 3, not just because the air smelled of shared meals and clean cloth and laughter, but because somehow the walls no longer echoed. They carried voices instead. Cairo resumed drawing. Sierra resumed singing softly to herself when she cooked or cleaned or checked diagnostics. Cole resumed caring. He fixed things now that didn't need fixing. Smoothed corners, cleaned up rust spots, rewired a lighting strip in the hall that had always flickered, not because it was critical, but because someone might walk there barefoot. One night, Sierra found him installing a curtain over the galley entry. "You said no curtains," she teased. He smirked. "Turns out I lied." They reached the Scallon refuel port a week later. It was ugly, scrap metal welded into a ring, orbiting a gas giant whose atmosphere boiled neon. But the trader there, an old contact of Cole's named Drex, didn't ask questions. He topped off fuel cells, swapped ID, and burned the Driftwake's old logs. "You got ghosts on this ship, Arlen?" Drex asked. Cole glanced over his shoulder. Sierra was helping Cairo attach a new stabilizer fin to the landing ramp. He smiled. "Not anymore." Driftwake had changed. Not just in system, though the new stabilizer coils buzzed smoother than ever, but in presence. It no longer drifted like a ghost through deep space. It breathed, lived. It was no longer just a ship patched with survival. It was a home held together by choice. Cole knew this most clearly in the small things. The smell of food Sierra made from a rotating cache of ration packs and spices she bartered from a trader. The sound of Cairo's laugh, rare but real, echoing through the maintenance bay. The way Sierra's fingers brushed his back when she passed behind him in the narrow corridor, quick, familiar, like gravity finding center. They were still in motion, but they weren't running anymore. At least not until the old world found them. It started as a ping in the dead of ship night, a sharp pulse in the comms relay. Cole sat up instantly, the tension snapping him awake like a blade drawn in his chest. Sierra stirred beside him, bare skin warm under the shared blanket. "What is it?" she murmured. He didn't answer, just slipped from the cot, pulled on a shirt, and walked barefoot to the cockpit. The comms display flickered. One signal, encrypted, fragmented, not a beacon, not an SOS. Just data packets wrapped in static, masked but not masked well. Someone had sent a trace signature toward the Scallon route, and it had bounced off their falsified ID tag. Cole's jaw tightened. They were being hunted again. By morning the message was clearer. A drone, launched from somewhere beyond the shipping lanes, had pinged their last known trajectory. The signature was old Union code, spoofed, illegal, likely belonging to a private buyer with access to black market intel. Sierra stood behind him as he explained, her face unreadable. "It's not a fleet," he said. "Not yet, but someone has started following breadcrumbs." "They won't stop," she said quietly. "No." She exhaled. "Then we leave again." He turned to her. "There's something else." "What?" "They're not looking for a ship, they're looking for a person." Her brow furrowed. "Me? I think so. The way that signature searched, it wasn't looking for a flight path, it was looking for biodata, something specific." Sierra sat down, staring at the deck plating. "They tagged me," she whispered. "Back on the slaver transport, a bio-lock. I didn't think they could still read it." Cole knelt beside her. "Can we remove it?" "Not without equipment I don't have." "Can we mask it?" She hesitated. "Maybe." He took her hand. "Then we try, we don't leave this to chance." Her eyes met his, shaken but steady. That night Sierra sat at the workbench, pulling open the old medscanner Cole had bought from Drex. Cairo hovered nearby, handing her tools, silent but focused. His hand brushed her wrist now and then, anchor points to make sure she was still there, still real. Cole watched them from the hallway. He had seen people fall apart under less pressure, watched trained soldiers unravel when the enemy came calling. But Sierra, she didn't flinch. She dissected the scanner, coded a new loop for false readings, and wrapped the emitter coil around her wrist like a bracelet. Cole approached and placed a small chip in her hand. "What's this?" "Old ID scrambler. Came from a smuggler drone. I've been holding it in case I needed to vanish." Sierra smiled. "We're not vanishing." "No," he said. "We're going to make them think we already did." They powered down for 3 days, faked a fuel leak, let the ship drift cold through the edge of a nebula pocket where sensor feedback scrambled most long-range scans. Cole rigged the life support to run just enough for survival, cut the heat, sealed the interior so no light escaped. It was cold, cramped, but it was quiet. Sierra and Cole sat back to back in the central corridor, wrapped in blankets, sharing breath and silence. Cairo slept tucked between them, curled like a cat, his small hands clinging to the front of Sierra's flight shirt. "Do you regret it?" she asked quietly. Cole didn't answer right away. "Regret what?" "Letting us stay." "No," he said. She turned her head, rested her chin on his shoulder. "Do you ever think about the past, about what you used to be?" "I think about who I was," he said, "but I don't miss him." "Why?" "Because that version of me would have turned away when you knocked from the inside." Her fingers gripped his arm. He leaned back further against her. In that darkness, in the chill of dead drift, their warmth was the only thing they had left. On the 4th day they lit the engines again. The scanner pinged. Nothing followed, for now. But they knew it wouldn't last. 2 weeks passed. They made a supply stop on a derelict station ringed around a dying moon, Mara's Rest. It was the kind of place where names weren't asked, where goods were bartered in silence, and where survival looked more like routine than desperation. Sierra sold scrap circuits. Cole traded 3 cartridges of plasma gel for synthetic food packs. Cairo found an old game module, bartered it for one of his drawings, and came back grinning. But something was off. It wasn't the people. It was the air. Cole noticed it as they were preparing to leave. A trader at the fuel dock kept glancing toward them. A child watched Sierra too long. A security cam powered up just after they passed. "Sierra," he said under his breath, "we have to go, now." They made it back to the driftwake in under 10 minutes. Cole didn't ask questions. He ran pre-flight. Cairo climbed into the co-pilot's chair without being told. Sierra sealed the hatch behind her and strapped into the jump seat, heart pounding. As the engines roared to life, a ship appeared on the far side of the station ring. It was sleek, black, no lights, a predator. They followed the tag, Cole muttered. They want me back, Sierra said. No, Cole replied. They want to own you. Cairo clenched his fists. They can't. Cole smiled grimly. Exactly. He punched the throttle. The driftwake screamed forward, past the outer dock rails into the burn zone. Plasma fields lit the void in orange flashes. The enemy ship followed, faster, tighter, hungrier. Sierra gripped the side panel. Weapons. We've got flares, maybe a pulse charge from the old mining array. Will it work? No, Cole said, but it'll make them blink. He fired the charge. The flare burst between them and their pursuer, blinding the sensors for half a second. Sierra activated the ID scrambler. The ship vanished from the radar. Then they jumped out of the lane, out of the past, out of reach. When they stopped, the stars were strange, unmapped, quiet. They were alone again. Sierra collapsed against Cole's chest in the cockpit, trembling. Cairo crawled onto her lap and buried his face in her shoulder. They stayed that way for a long time, just breathing, just alive. Later that night, in the warmth of the maintenance bay, Sierra ran her fingers over the skin behind her ear. No more tag, she whispered. No more brand. Cole approached from behind, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. They can't find you, he said. They'll try. They'll fail. She turned to face him. I'm not afraid of dying, she said. I'm afraid of being theirs again. You're not theirs, he said. You're not anyone's. I'm yours, she said. His hands trembled. Then he kissed her, not because of passion, not because of escape, but because for once something was theirs and it wasn't fear. The new sector didn't have a name, just coordinates. A gap between mapped lanes filled with static and the ghostly light of half-dead stars. It was the kind of place you only found when you stopped trying to be found. The driftwake floated quietly, her engines cooling in silence. The crew had settled into a strange rhythm, not quite peace, but something like it. Sierra sat at the galley table, peeling synth fruit with a dull knife. Cairo was nearby, building a makeshift turret out of spare bolts and wiring clamps. He didn't speak much, but then he rarely had. It wasn't silence born of fear anymore, though. It was silence born of comfort, of being allowed to choose your words. Cole stood in the doorway, watching them with that unreadable expression he wore when something weighed on his mind. Sierra looked up. You're thinking. I always think. You frown when it's important. He came over and sat across from her. Cairo didn't look up, but his ears perked slightly. I got a message, Cole said. Sierra blinked. From who? An old contact, ex-Union. Works salvage intel now, said someone's been buying search scans, specific ones. They're looking for a ship matching ours, not the ID, the structure. Sierra sat back slowly. They're trying to track us by silhouette. Worse, hull heat patterns, engine cycles, even damage profiles. Cairo looked up now. Cole nodded at him gently. You okay, buddy? Cairo nodded once. Are we in danger again? Not yet, Cole said, but someone wants us found, Sierra finished. Cole tapped his fingers on the table. They're not going to stop. So we keep running, Sierra asked. He didn't answer. Cairo pushed his tiny turret forward. We fight. They both turned to look at him. He was frowning now, eyebrows drawn, fingers clenched around a wrench far too big for his hand. We fight, he repeated. If they come, I want to help. You already helped, Sierra said gently. Not enough. Cairo, they took everything from us, he said, voice shaking. And I don't want them to take you or Cole or this. He looked around at the ship, the warmth, the light. This is ours now. That night, Sierra sat with Cole near the maintenance console, reviewing external scan logs. The tension never fully left them, not even in sleep. But it was different now. It wasn't panic, it was purpose. You know, Sierra said quietly, he used to talk in his sleep. Cairo, she nodded, before they took us. He'd mumble stories, dreams. He used to make up creatures, ones that only came out at night to protect little kids. He called them night things. She smiled. They had wings made of light and claws that only hurt bad guys. Cole smirked. Sounds like something I could have used as a kid. He stopped talking after the raid, Sierra said. stopped drawing, stopped dreaming. And now, he's building weapons. She looked down. I don't know if that's better. Cole leaned against her shoulder. He's trying to protect you, it's the same instinct. But he's just a child. So were you, Cole said, when you started fighting to survive. She didn't respond, just leaned into him. The next morning, Cairo was gone. At first they thought he was in the engine crawl, then the galley, then the vent shafts, but he wasn't anywhere. Sierra's heart pounded. Cairo, she called. Cairo, answer me. Cole scanned the ship. Airlock 2 is open. What? Sierra's voice broke. They sprinted to the rear chamber. The outer hatch was sealed, but the emergency rover was gone. A small transport bubble, good for short trips and no bigger than a closet. Cole had rigged it with manual steering last month for emergencies only. The signal was weak but traceable. He was heading toward a derelict vessel floating about 4 clicks away, an old prison barge abandoned years ago. One of the Driftwake scans had marked it as unsafe due to residual radiation and hull collapse. What the hell is he doing? Cole muttered. Sierra was already climbing into the pilot's seat. Strap in, we're going after him. They found Cairo inside the barge, halfway through the collapsed central corridor, prying open a sealed door with a crowbar. When they reached him, Sierra nearly collapsed with relief. Cairo, he flinched, but didn't stop. I found a signal booster, he said, pointing to a control panel. I think I can use it to mask us better. You could have died, Sierra said, grabbing his shoulders, but I didn't. She shook him gently. Why didn't you tell us? Because you'd say no. You're damn right I would. He looked up at her with wide, tired eyes. I just wanted to be brave. Cole knelt beside him. You are brave, but bravery doesn't mean doing it alone. Cairo looked down. The girl never cried. What? In my story, he whispered. The girl never cried, not once, no matter what. I wanted to be like her. Strong, Sierra pulled him into her arms. You don't have to be her, you can cry. Cairo didn't respond, but his body shook, and for the first time in years he did. He cried. They brought the booster back. Cole installed it in the nav array. It wouldn't make them invisible, but it would make them harder to pinpoint, more like a ghost than a target. And Cairo, he slept for 12 hours. When he woke, he didn't say much, but he smiled. 3 days later, the proximity alert screamed. A ship dropped out of jump space, military-grade, black hull, no registry. It didn't scan. It didn't hail, it fired. The warning sirens on the Driftwake weren't meant to be loud. Cole had designed them that way, subtle vibrations through the hull, small amber lights tucked in corners, enough to alert without inducing panic. But now, as the silent tremor hummed through the floor and the soft amber turned to violent red, panic came anyway. Sierra was the first to reach the cockpit. She didn't wait to ask questions. Who is it? Cole didn't look away from the screen. No signature, no hails, no scans, just straight for us. The enemy ship was sleek, black as vacuum with no external lights. It didn't announce itself, it didn't warn, it just fired. The plasma round hit the outer shielding, vaporizing one of the sensor dishes and rocking the Driftwake hard enough to throw Cairo against the wall as he ran into the corridor. Cole caught him, pulling him upright. You okay? Cairo nodded, eyes wide. Sierra leaned over the navigation panel. We need to move. Cole's voice was calm, too calm. I don't know if we can outrun it. Then we don't, Sierra said, teeth clenched. We outsmart it. He stared at her. You want to fight. I want to live, and running hasn't done that, not really. Another shot rocked the hull. Cole barked to the system's console. Shields are down to 60. Internal power rerouted to maneuver thrusters. Sierra moved to the weapons grid. What do we have? Mining charges. 1 EMP node from the old cargo run. Maybe a couple flares. She grinned bitterly. Let's get creative. They didn't fire back right away. Cole banked hard, turning the Driftwake into the gravity shadow of a nearby asteroid field. The enemy ship followed, but not fast. It was slow, surgical, calculating, like it knew it didn't need to hurry. They're toying with us, Cole muttered. Then let's bite them back, Sierra replied. Cairo climbed into the co-pilot's seat. I can run the flare rig. Cole blinked. You sure? Cairo nodded. You showed me last week. He had, and right now there was no time to argue. Cole threw a lever. Okay, on my mark, fire flare bank 2, then hit the shield disruptor. Cairo's fingers hovered, the enemy ship crept closer, charging plasma. Now, the driftwake whipped around, engines flaring in full reverse. Cairo fired both flares. Light blinded the enemy sensors for a split second. Then Sierra launched the EMP. A pulse of blue rippled through the field. For half a breath, silence. Then the enemy ship sputtered. Not stopped, but staggered. Cole hit the thrusters. "Where are we going?" Sierra asked. "Down," he said. The asteroid field was dense, debris and frozen minerals floating in spiraling bands around a dead moon. Cole dove the driftwake into the thickest part, zigzagging through broken rock and forgotten wrecks. The enemy couldn't follow directly, it stayed above, circling. "They're waiting us out," Sierra said. "They'll watch until we make a mistake." Cole nodded. "Then we don't give them time." He pulled up a schematic. There was a wrecked cargo hauler buried deep in the belt, one he'd seen on scans weeks ago, still radioactive, still large, still dangerous. "I've got an idea." Sierra looked at him. "Tell me it doesn't involve dying." "Only probably. They used the wreck as bait." Cole vented atmosphere in timed bursts, mimicking power signatures. Sierra rigged the mining charges around the central core of the old ship. Cairo climbed into the drone cockpit to fly the decoy relay. And when the enemy finally moved in, sweeping low over the wreck, scanning for survivors, Sierra lit the charges. The explosion bloomed like a second sunrise, igniting metal and flame in a burst of radiant death. The enemy's shields took the brunt, but not all. One engine flared out. The nose spun wildly. "They're leaking," Cole said. "We've got a window." "Then punch it." They launched from the belt, diving beneath the disabled enemy ship. Sierra fired the last flare, blinding its rear sensors, and Cole aimed directly at the open hangar bay. Sierra blinked. "Wait, what are you?" "We're boarding." "What?" "I'm done running." The driftwake slammed into the enemy's hangar bay with a metallic shriek, magnetic clamps locking as the hull scraped. Cole leapt out with a rifle, Sierra at his side. Cairo stayed back, but his voice echoed in the comms. "I'm watching sensors. I'll guide you." The interior of the ship was sleek, like a corporate assassin had built a war machine. Sierra's voice was cold. "This is them. This is who bought us." They moved fast, clearing one corridor after another. No resistance. "They're gone," Cole muttered. "No," Sierra said. "They're watching." Then a hiss from above. A figure dropped twice Sierra's size, plated in dark armor, helmet like a predator's skull. Cole fired. The plasma bolt hit the thing in the shoulder, but it didn't stop. Sierra lunged. She didn't use a gun, she used her hands. Her fist slammed into the chest plate, shattering the seal. She pulled the helmet off. The thing inside wasn't human, but it wasn't alien either. It was bred, built, twisted. Cole dragged her back. "We don't need to win, we just need to wreck their systems." They ran to the bridge. Inside, a woman stood at the helm, tall, pale, eyes black with implants. "You don't belong here," she said. Sierra lifted her chin. "Neither do you." "I paid for you," the woman replied. "You are property." Cole raised his rifle. "She was never yours." The woman smiled. "Then die with her." She activated the failsafe. The whole ship began to burn. They barely made it back to the driftwake. Sierra hit the launch button as the enemy vessel exploded behind them, a fireball expanding into space like a scream silenced too late. In the cockpit, Cairo was crying again, not in fear, in relief. Cole landed in the co-pilot's chair, chest heaving. Sierra slumped beside him. "You good?" he asked. She reached out, fingers brushing his hand. "I'm still here," she said. That night the three of them sat in the corridor, bodies bruised, exhausted, silent. Then Cairo said something. She said she bought us. Sierra looked at him. "You're not something to be bought." "Are we free now?" he asked. Cole looked at both of them, then he smiled. "Yeah, we are." The debris field shimmered behind them like embers of a fire finally snuffed out. The enemy vessel, the one that claimed ownership of Sierra's past, was gone, reduced to nothing but twisted metal and silent ash. But the silence inside Sierra was deeper. In the days that followed the battle, she barely spoke. She wasn't cold or distant, just searching. She walked the corridors of the driftwake like someone relearning their own shape. She ran her fingers along the walls, paused to touch the floor panels, stared into reflections, then looked away. Cole watched her from a distance. He didn't push. He knew what it meant to come back from something like that and not recognize yourself. Cairo healed faster. His drawings came back bolder, more colorful. He drew the enemy ship exploding in a burst of light. He drew Sierra with glowing fists. He drew Cole holding a wrench like a sword. But one drawing he didn't show them. He kept it folded in the back of his sketchpad. It was of a woman standing in the rain. Her back turned, hair long, hands open, a name carved into her skin not by violence but by choice. And for the first time it wasn't Sierra. 3 nights after the battle, Sierra stood at the observation port watching a dying blue giant flicker in the distance. Cole approached with 2 steaming mugs. "Tea," he said, "or at least the closest thing these rations can make." She took one, offering a small smile. "Thanks." He stood beside her, letting the silence settle. She broke it. "Do you ever feel like you're someone else?" He glanced at her. "All the time. I mean like you're wearing someone's skin, someone who didn't make it, but you're still pretending to be them." He took a sip. "You're not pretending. I don't even know who I am. You're Sierra. That was a name they gave me." Cole paused. "Do you want to change it?" "I don't know." He looked down into his cup. "Well, I've been calling you something else in my head." She raised an eyebrow. "Really?" He nodded. "Yeah." "What is it?" He hesitated, then said softly, "Orin." Her lips parted. "Orin," he nodded, "means first dawn in an old Earth tongue, the one that comes after the longest night. I thought it fit you." She stared at him, stunned. "I didn't want to say it out loud, didn't want to name something that wasn't mine." Sierra, no. Orin felt something shift in her chest. Like a breath she hadn't known she'd been holding released. "That's beautiful," she whispered. He smiled. "So is the person it reminds me of." She didn't change her name immediately, but she wore it like a seed, quiet, deep, waiting. That night she asked Cairo what he would call her if he could name her anything. He didn't hesitate. "Orin." She blinked. "You knew?" He nodded. "Cole called you that in his sleep once." She laughed, a quiet, stunned sound. Cairo smiled. It sounded right. From that day forward she was Sierra no longer. She was Orin. She said it aloud, practiced it, wrote it into the Driftwake's logs, even printed it on a tag and stitched it into her coats, in her lining. The girl who had been bought, branded, and broken, she never existed. The woman who stood now, who fought, who burned, who chose, she had a name. Orin. The ship changed again. With the threat gone, Cole finally turned his attention to repairs he'd postponed for months. The Driftwake got a fresh coating of solar panels. The air scrubbers ran clean. They even wired up a proper gravity plate in the galley, no more floating salt packets. Cairo helped with everything. He was no longer just a passenger, he was crew. One night Orin found him painting on the wall of the lower corridor, a mural, her face, mid-laugh, surrounded by fire and stars. She crouched beside him. "What's this?" He looked up, shy. "It's you, the day you changed." "I didn't know I laughed like that." "You didn't, not yet, but I think you will." She touched his cheek. "You are the best thing I ever saved." He looked down. "You saved me," she smiled. "No, we saved each other." Later, in the quiet of the engine room, Orin kissed Cole for the first time since the fight. It wasn't desperate, it wasn't stolen, it was patient, earned. She broke away first, looking into his eyes. "You gave me something I didn't know I needed." He touched her jaw. "What?" "A choice." He smiled. "Then choose again." "I choose this." She kissed him again. The next day a signal reached them, faint, encoded but unmistakable. It was from a colony, one Orin remembered from before the raids, a place she thought had fallen. They were alive and they needed help. Cole looked at her across the table. "We don't have to answer." Orin looked down at the comm pad. "They helped us once," she said, "before everything." Cairo looked up. "Then we help them now." Cole nodded. "Okay, let's get moving." Orin smiled. Her name was hers now, her life was hers now, and the fire that tried to break her, it had forged her instead. The planet didn't have a name on any map, just a frequency, a call, a whisper through the void, too weak for most ships to care about, but Orin heard it, felt it in the marrow of her bones. "They're survivors," she said simply, her fingers resting on the comm pad. Cole didn't ask how she knew, he just nodded. "Then we go." Cairo leaned over the nav console. How far? 17 jumps, Cole said, and the last 5 won't be clean. We've done worse, Oren replied, tightening the strap on her vest. She didn't wear slave leather anymore. She wore flight gear now. Her hair was tied back in a braid, her tag reading Oren stitched to the front, and on her right hand, wrapped in wire and cloth, was the bracelet Cole made for her out of old stabilizer rings. A ship was a ship, but home, that was what you made with people who stayed. The jumps weren't easy. 2 gravwells pulled the driftwake into turbulence. One of the cold fusion chambers shorted mid-jump, and Cairo had to crawl into the vent with a power splice kit bigger than his arms. But they made it through. Each new sector brought light, color, hope. They passed a free world caravan who gave them spare rations. A listening post with a graffiti mural of "Resist" across the hull offered them water in exchange for music. So Cairo played his drum module through the comms and made 3 mechanics cry. It wasn't just survival anymore, it was living. The colony came into view on day 13. A small arc of land circling an ocean under a pink sky. Satellites still flickered above, low on power. Landing beacons blinked erratically, but it was there, still breathing, still holding on. Oren stood at the ramp as the driftwake lowered. Her heart beat like it hadn't in years, not in fear, but in wonder. Cairo stood beside her, wearing a jacket 2 sizes too big, patched with every world they'd passed through. Cole stood behind them both, arms folded, chin raised. They didn't come down to take, they came to give. The people were gaunt, quiet, cautious, but they didn't point weapons, not at first. An older man stepped forward, cybernetic implant over one eye, beard gone half white from radiation burns. "You answered our call?" Oren nodded. "We heard you, you're not alone." He stared at her. "You're Caliph." She straightened. "I was. I'm Oren now." He took a breath. "You were marked like us." Cole stepped forward. "We're not here to expose you, we're here to build something." The man's shoulders sagged as if a weight was finally removed, then quietly he stepped aside. "Then come in." They worked for days. The colony had power issues, shield gaps, failing water condensers. The people were skilled but tired, too tired to do it alone. So Cole taught them how to fix coolant lines with scrap. Oren taught the young how to disable trackers, how to make false ID, how to run without ever running again. Cairo taught them how to laugh again. He painted the walls of the outpost with stars, with fire, with the faces of people who hadn't smiled in years. And then one night he painted a mural of Oren, not the fighter, not the runaway, but the woman standing still, arms out, sun rising behind her. And under it he painted, "All of it is ours." That night, Oren stood on the roof of the comms tower, wind lifting her hair, eyes watching the stars. Cole joined her. "You think they'll find us again?" she asked. "Maybe. Will we run?" "No, fight. If we have to." She turned to him. "What if we just stay?" He smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." She rested her head on his shoulder. "I'm tired, Cole, so am I, but I'm happy." He kissed the top of her head. "We made it." "No," she whispered. "We made more than that." They stayed, and others came. Ships answered Oren's encoded beacon, not desperate but hopeful, refugees, traders, people with nowhere else to go. And somehow a place without a name became something bigger, a place to choose, a place to build, a place to love. Years passed. The colony turned green again. Gardens grew in the dust. Children laughed in fields that once burned. Towers rose not to surveil, but to watch the stars in peace. And at the heart of it all, in a small home shaped from the shell of the driftwake herself, Oren kept her bracelet by the door. The one Cole made. The one she wore the day she became real. And every night before sleeping she whispered, not in fear, not in grief, but in joy, "This is mine, this is ours." And Cole would answer, "Forever."